What up, dog? Let's talk about the Week 10 NFL reaction. The Detroit Lions beat the Chicago Bears with Justin Field ran for like 145 and a touchdown. He also threw for a touchdown. But Detroit Lions did get their first win on the road in like 2 years. So that was a big win for Detroit Lions. That's enough about them. And the Green Bay Packers upsetted the Dallas Cowboys. But I ain't never had no hope in Dallas anyway. To me, Dak is overrated. The Dallas Cowboys had no identity on offense. They don't know who their running backs going to be. And CeeDee Lamb is not a number one wide receiver. But but the Green Bay Packers did beat them to end a 5-game losing streak. That was a big game for the Green Bay Packers. They needed that game. Aaron Rodgers played good, but the Packers did what everybody said they should have did from the beginning. They ran the ball. So that was a big game for the Green Bay Packers, but I still think they done. It might have been a little too late. But let's talk about the game of the week. The Minnesota Vikings going to Buffalo and playing the Bills. Minnesota came back down by, I want to say, 17 points at one point, and they came back and beat the Buffalo Bills. And Dalvin Cook had a big game, and Justin Jefferson caught like 10 passes for like 197. And Stephon Diggs had a big game, but Buffalo came up short. Minnesota needed that game for, I would say, like a statement game. I said that in my last video. Minnesota had to beat Buffalo so people could quit talking about Minnesota only beating this team and that team and the team they beating isn't good. But when Minnesota was down by 10 points to the Commanders last week, people crucified Minnesota by being in that position. Then when the Commanders beat the Eagles yesterday, everybody said, "Oh, the Eagles needed that. They needed that loss on their schedule." No, fuck that. Keep the same energy. I've been telling people the Eagles is not that good. Minnesota shows you they can come back being down 10, 17, or 3 points in the fourth quarter. The Eagles had not showed you they can come back being down in the fourth quarter. Jalen Hurts has zero fourth quarter comeback this season. And Kirk Cousins got about, man, I don't know, about 5 or 6 in this season alone. So Minnesota, to me, is more battle tested than the Eagles. And the Commanders ran the ball down the Eagles' throat. What Minnesota should have did, but that was week 2. But I feel like if Minnesota played the Eagles today, Minnesota will win. Because our defense is way better than they was in week 2. The whole team is way better. So why everybody talking about the Eagles this and that, and who the best team in the NFL, and they still trying to, throw shots at the Vikings, I'm okay with that. Cause I don't want everybody to ride a coattail. But the best team in the NFL, I would say, is Kansas City, then Minnesota. Because Minnesota went to Buffalo and beat Buffalo, where everybody had Buffalo being a Super Bowl contender. And Minnesota went up there and beat the fuck out of Buffalo. So I don't want to hear no more of that shit talking about this and that about the Eagles and the Vikings. No, the Vikings right now are better than the Eagles. Even though the Eagles beat them in week 2, where Minnesota was still learning a new defense, a whole new defense scheme, and still trying to get their offense underway. So Minnesota is a better team right now than they was in week 2 or in week 1 when they beat the fuck out of Green Bay. But Minnesota, I think, is the best team in the NFC. Is not the Eagles. The Eagles had yet to show you they can come. They can come back in the fourth quarter, being down multiple touchdowns. They lost yesterday to a backup quarterback. Let that sink in. So I would say Minnesota right now is fighting with the Eagles for that number one seed. The Eagles is 8-1, and the Vikings are 8-1. And the Eagles got some tough games coming ahead, just like Minnesota do. But I would like for Minnesota to get that number one seed and have all our games at home at the U.S. Bank Stadium. That would be that. That would be big up for Minnesota because Minnesota tough to play at home. But the Eagles are not the best team in the NFC. The Eagles got exposed. If you slow down that running game and you could score points and control the line of scrimmage like the Commanders did, the Eagles looked all out of sync. And they was at home and lost. So it's gonna be some nice game coming up. I think Minnesota gonna end up getting that number one seed if Minnesota can come out the next 2 weeks and beat the Cowboys. They play Sunday, and they play New England on Thanksgiving night. So Minnesota need to come out 2-0 in the next two games, and hopefully the Eagles can stumble once again to whoever they play in the next two games. But that was just my recap of Week 10 of NFL and Minnesota Viking path to the number one seed and not the Eagles. Let's go.